Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the much anticipated season finale of season 3 of the Rink Moose Hockey Podcast. 3 months too late, but we're back nonetheless. I am one of your hosts, as always, Nick Costu, along with my good pal, Kyle Nice. Kyle, how are you doing on this evening?
First of all, Nick, I barely recognize you. And second of all, it's been so long since we've been in the saddle, it kind of hurts now. And that's just a darn shame. And I think what better way to start than kind of explaining our absence a little bit.
Yeah. Well, where do you start?
Well, let's look at where we left off. We came in at the end of the Montreal-Toronto series. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So that was a time when we had all of our pals, all of the Rink Moose community kind of coming together on different sides of the spectrum, right? We had some Leafs fans. We had myself. We had a gathering in the studio. It was an epic Game 7 that we all watched together for the most part. Mm-hmm. Joe wasn't there because he didn't have the
right.
He didn't have the stones.
Studious. He was studying. He was studious.
No, he wasn't. He just didn't have the stones to show up.
Okay, fair enough.
And then after that, like as life had it, I continued my pilgrimage into this off season as a sole Montreal fan. I watched a lot of games on my own. I learned a lot about being a fan in a city that isn't the one you live in. Mm-hmm. And it was honestly, I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but I was so wrapped up in that. And I honestly, I couldn't find the energy to reach out and download all that information onto the show.
So you were so overwhelmed with your childhood team, your favorite team in this run, you couldn't talk about hockey anymore?
No,
you were just swept with emotion?
It's a ridiculous. Well, that's one factor of it. Like, part of it is that. Part of it is I wanted to experience it in its most pure, natural form, which is me, myself, just going in on this journey, essentially. So that was part of it for sure. And the other part of it was, let's be honest, summer got busy. And I know that's a shitty excuse, and you guys don't want to hear this crap, but you and I both got into some wrist deep shit. Yeah. So that happened, and then enough time passes, and you're like, well, we haven't done it in 3 weeks, so what's another week? And then it becomes a thing. And then it becomes like, all right, well, we've lost too much time and all this kind of stuff. But all in all, to wrap that up, we apologize. It was a shitty way. This is a shitty way to end what was, at least on my part, a fantastic season. Mm-hmm. And one I would have liked to share with the group here. Mm-hmm. But we'll be better next time, and here we are.
Yeah, such is life. I mean, make no secret, everyone listening to this show, whether you know us personally or whether you're just some fan listening in Tokyo or Brazil or California, I mean, this is a hobby for both of us. This is no career right now. Right. There's no sponsorship on this show. There's no White Claw sponsoring the show or a Budweiser. Not yet. Not yet.
It's coming this year, though.
It's coming potentially. We got some things in the works. But the point is, I mean, when this is your hobby, there's certain things that have to come first. And the reality is, the past 2 to 3 months, that just happened to be the case. It's sad because it happened to be one of those summers, one of those playoff seasons where, like, it was unprecedented, right? When's the last time we had a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup final? Not since the Oilers in the late 2000s, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh boy!
Right, Oilers versus
Canucks 2010.
Oh right, yeah. So exactly a decade. More than a decade. Yeah.
And
that's surreal. So the fact, and it was your team, team.
It was.
Shocking me, me, the Vegas fanboy, the impenetrable Pete DeBoer wall was broken through.
Yeah.
And I was watching these games, and I was stunned what was unfolding before my eyes. Everyone was saying this Canadian division soft, this Canadian division, they're done. No one picked Montreal in that series. Right?
No.
Just like they didn't pick them against the Leafs, but no one picked them against Vegas, and then you see us how it happened.
And, you know, the saddest thing now that we're talking, and I've never thought about this, now that we're talking about the saddest thing is that I would have loved to be able to go back on the archives and see what my reactions were during this run. Like I wanted to see, okay, after the Leafs series, what was I saying? After Vegas, what was I saying? You know, just from a personal perspective. That it's sad to not have that.
And you might not have that for a very long time. I don't want to be negative.
In a year. I'll have that in a year.
You might. Hey, you're bullish. You might. But like those, any fan of any great franchise, ask Chicago fans, Pittsburgh fans, they'll tell you you can't take that stuff for granted because it'll happen. And those runs, you may not see them for a while.
Yeah,
you have to enjoy them while they're there, which you did.
I did.
You just didn't get
really
to talk about them, and you won't have these archives to look back on. Correct. So I get what you're saying.
Correct. And it was just such a relentless pace. But we've all got our top 10 favorite hockey memories. And I would almost argue that maybe 4 or 5 new ones have been brought up to me personally.
That's amazing.
And it is amazing. And there was so many moments, so many overtime thrillers, so many big moments. So I'm just going to go through a couple of them right now that you'll probably remember.
Please.
The Suzuki Caulfield 2-on-1 versus the Leafs.
Yes.
Where everyone's like, oh, Caulfield, he's going to shoot it.
Game 5?
Could have been...
It was game 5. It was the Galchenyuk giveaway.
Yes, correct.
And then the two of them go down, just the two of them, and it's the perfect finish.
Because the next one was the Kotkaniemi overtime winner.
And that's what we saw at your place. We were there live.
Yep, another big memory. Another one for me was the Carey Price blocker save on... Mitch Marner, and pair that with the Carey Price stick save on Jason Spezza. 2 mind-boggling, game-changing saves.
Sure.
Fast forward to Tyler Toffoli's game winner versus Winnipeg, and the brilliant call on that one. The classic Fleury giveaway,
and there was drama in that. Let's not jump too ahead. You had the Mark Scheifele thing on our friend of the show, Jake Evans. I mean, so that got a lot of attention. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You had the Leafs and the Jets series starting off with major injuries on either side. So it kind of set a weird tone either way.
Yeah.
And then Scheifele turned out to be out for the whole series.
Yeah. And I agree. The Fleury gaff. I mean,
that was a huge, and a humorous and a big moment altogether.
And it was interesting. The Vegas fan and we got the Montreal fan talking here. A guy who'd been following Vegas all year. There was all this drama with the goaltending, right? And it was longer than a year. This dates back to the Fleury Allen Walsh stuff.
Yeah.
And I just knew in that second, when that turnover came, when that inexcusable house league turnover happened, beer league, we see that on Tuesday nights in beer league, those kind of things. When that happened in like the final minute of a playoff game where the series is tied 1-1, the swing game, so to speak, when that happened, I knew he would not see another game as a Vegas goaltender ever again. I know he started later in that series. Pete DeBoer went back to him. But I got to think ownership when they lost the series and they looked back at the Fleury gaff as the reason they lost, because it was the reason they lost. They win that game. You're up 2-1. You have a more commanding lead. Yeah. When management looked back at that event, I think they realized now's the time to kick this $7 million a year player out the window.
Right.
It was their perfect excuse, right? Like the fan base would never let you trade Fleury. He was there. Yeah. He's the OG guy. He was there from day one. He's the first ever Vegas draft pick. All management was waiting for was for one little slip, and it was a big slip. And all they needed was that, and then he was gone.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. We'll get into the offseason stuff.
And to have McGuire on the call there, again.
Oh, my God.
A classic moment paired with another classic player call.
You talk about top 10 moments. That inserted itself into...
Yeah. Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, Pierre specifically was just talking about how well Fleury in particular was playing the puck this game and how it made such a difference. Fleury's really playing the puck so well this game. It really made all the difference. Oh, I agree, Pierre. And seconds later, the moment happens, and it was just
crazy.
So
hilarious. Only Pierre would have that kind of like divine intervention. Just come in. And do that.
And then one of my particular, maybe the biggest moment is the Dano Lehkonen overtime winner versus Vegas
against Leonard,
to bury Vegas was just such a moment. And then not too many more in the Tampa Bay series, but that Josh Anderson flying tap-in goal as the game winner, that was a huge one, and one of my absolute favorite calls on Montreal TSN 690 radio. Absolutely one of my favorite calls of all time. And then of course I went to Montreal to watch Game 4. And then it was just so many moments. Like, it was so amazing and so overwhelming and so emotional. Like, Nick, I'm sure you know this, when your team is in the playoffs like this and every other night you're gearing up, you're getting your body, your mental ready. Like, emotionally, it's taxing.
Yeah.
And then, like I said before, a lot of these games, and this is the sad bit, when your team is not the city you live in, it's tough because you're doing a lot of this on your own. So you can't feed off the energy of a friend or a group. And that was tough. So that's what drew me to the city and to go there itself. So just a special.
No, I'm glad. Run. I'm glad you got to do all of that. You know, I've had those runs recently, whether it be the Blue Jays in the playoffs or the Raptors' most recent run, and I can see what you mean. Every second night, there's a big game to look forward to, a big game to drink to, a big game to go out with friends to, and so the fact your NHL team got to experience this is that must have been something special.
And then wearing the jersey. Both to work and on outings in Toronto, like getting heckled by so many people, coworkers and strangers alike. It was all part of the experience. It was all part of the experience.
Very nice.
So it was awesome.
No,
very grateful, and I'm proud of a lot of the guys. Like, I know a lot of the Gallaghers and the Webbers of the world were literally skating on one leg. Weber's out for the year. It just really summarizes like how much of a grind it was.
And the character on that team.
Oh, fuck. Like, there's no bigger character team. There is no bigger character team in the 2021 season than this team. I don't know if that can be argued by Joe or anyone else. Because, again, we all look at the roster, the skill level, the on-paper stats, and you're like, that's not great. But look at what they did. And no one can ever take this away from them. I don't give a fuck what you say about, they came 18th in the league. I don't give a fuck about any of that. You cannot take this run away. And Leafs fans would shoot a small kitten for this kind of run.
For sure.
And one more observation I'll make from the playoffs in general as a whole. Teams like Montreal, New York Islanders, Tampa Bay, and Vegas created a new playoff success template. And for me, that looks like a good goalie, large, heavy defenseman that can move the puck, and a plethora of talent up front. To me, that's the new formula. Whatever we do from now on, every team in the top four had a good goalie, heavy defenseman, heavy defenseman that could move the puck, not necessarily scoring a ton of points, and then talent up front. That was the formula that won this year. And it was consistent and it was noticeable. And I think a lot of teams, that's why there was such a premium on so many defensemen. Like, Chicago paid tooth and nail to get Seth Jones for a reason.
And so is that why your other favorite team, the Colorado Avalanche, were upset in the second round?
Precisely why. That is precisely why.
Because that's the only other team I want to touch on before we move on. That was probably the one team that caught everyone off guard because they were the favorites, right? They were probably the Vegas favorites to win it all, and they were leading the series against Vegas 2-0, and they went on to lose 4 straight games.
It's really like, it's almost existential crisis kind of stuff.
And you remember there was the moment you really talked about the Jared Bednar calling out his players after the game 3. So they lose one game. They're still up 2-1 in the series. And this guy's losing his shit, calling out guys. And it didn't work.
It didn't work.
It totally backfired. They lost the next 3 games. And that was it.
Yeah. It was shocking.
They lit up Robin Lehner 7-1 in the first game.
It was crazy. It was really crazy, and it kind of set the league on notice because a lot of teams, this Colorado blue line was probably the template to follow. You had so much talent. You had the Girards who was on a 50-point pace. You had the Makars. You had the Devon Taves. You had a lot of guys. But at the end of the day, I guess it's just their mentality just didn't line up. Like I'm now looking at this team and I'm thinking, okay, Makar and Devon Taves as a top line, I have zero problems with. But I mean, I love Sam Girard, but when it gets deep into the playoffs, I'd rather have him over a ton of guys, but who would you rather have, Sam Girard or Seth Jones? I think that's become very, very clear, and you could even make the argument, Sam Girard versus a David Savard.
Uh-huh.
David Savard on Tampa Bay, like, you know what? You've got Makar to do all that power play stuff. Maybe David Savard would have helped them in that series. And as stupid as it sounds ridiculous to say out loud, but in practice, simply in the playoffs, I think it could help. Mm-hmm. It could help. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think Joe Sakic has realized this, and maybe he'll take some sort of notice.
Yeah.
And it's another reason the Leafs cannot keep losing Jake Muzzin in these playoffs.
Right.
Because he's more valuable than any other guy on that blue line by a long shot to me. And he got injured this year and he got injured last year, and it ended up biting them.
Well, I think talking about the Avalanche there and summing up the playoff run that was, and of course, I mean, we have to give a congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yeah, back-to-back champions. John Cooper, another cup, another ring for him. We'll get into him a little later on because there's some Team Canada news we want to get into. But yeah, congrats to them. It truly is another one of these franchises. Like you can put them up there now with Chicago and Pittsburgh and LA, right? Yeah. And they've done it. And we'll get into the transactions. They're now a lot different team than they were. I think they basically lost their entire third line over the offseason. But you can't take away what they accomplished. And they'll be back. They're still a contender, they're still the ones to beat going into this next season. So congratulations to them. I know we don't like them a lot here on this show, but you got to give credit to where credit's due.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the Avs, a big player they've lost is Philip Grubauer.
Yeah.
And they've lost him in essentially this new expansion draft. Of course, at the end of June, the Seattle Kraken had their expansion draft. They drafted a team. They drafted something. And we now have our 32nd team in the NHL. It's official. I have to pull just like you, I have to pull the roster up now because there's a lot of fresh faces. I won't lie. Some of these guys they decided to take I had never heard of before. Just because it seems they went from a strategy of maximizing salary cap allocation, salary cap space ahead of maybe the most talented guys, guys like Landeskog, Tarasenko were left off the board in favor of guys who could save you money and would allow you to have a lot of salary cap space. And that's what it looks like. I mean, we look at the roster here. I mean, you got some name brand guys: Yanni Gourde, Jordan Eberle, Jaden Schwartz, Brandon Tanev. I know you're a big Tanev fan. Mark Giordano on defense, Jamie Alexiak on defense, Vince Dunn on defense, the young Hayden Fleury on defense. And of course the goalie tandem that's been getting a lot of attention, Grubauer and Drieger. So lots of attention on this roster. I mean, what is? I'll just ask you frankly, what is this team in your eyes? What is their identity? What do you expect from them? And where do you see them stacking up in this weak Pacific Division?
See, the fact that they're in the Pacific. Yeah, The fact that they're in the Pacific Division makes it all the more difficult to analyze because if you look at the roster, at least personally, they look like a really run-of-the-mill middle ground team. In saying that, they look like they have a heavier defense. It looks like they're a team that wants to be harder to play against. But then the Pacific is so darn weak. It's like, do they have a shot? Now, regardless of any of that, I think they're going to be a team that just misses in the Pacific. They're going to be kind of a 5th place in the Pacific kind of team, which is honestly, to me, the worst kind of strategy. If I were fucking Seattle, I would have found a way to structure my draft in a way that makes me maximize my draft picks and maximize my ability to come last in the league. While also somehow appeasing the fans. To me, I don't give a fuck about the fans in the first year. I want Shane Wright. I want Connor Bedard next year. You know, like, is this not the exact perfect time to structure your strategy in such a way to bottom out right now? With all get a bunch of 2022 draft picks. Like, take guys' best players and then trade them back for, do what Vegas did in a sort of way. And these guys just seem like a really middle ground. Like, they're not good. They're not Vegas good. It doesn't look like they're going to make any miracles like Vegas did. But at the same time, they're not going to bottom out. And they don't have a plethora of draft picks. So I'm not liking the Kraken situation right now. The biggest thing going for them right now is probably that they have Jordan Eberle on the team, which is a huge plus. And that's about it.
Yeah. There's some question marks for sure. I like the defense. I think Jamie Alexiak's a very underrated player, you know, and they signed him immediately when they got him, which shows they like him. I think Vince Dunn was a guy who was overshadowed a lot in St. Louis. I think he can really lead a power play. Hayden Fleury was a hidden gem in Carolina. And then Mark Giordano, say what you want about him being old, but he's probably the candidate to be captain there.
Probably.
So I like the defense. The goaltending is great. I mean, I was never a Grubauer guy until this past playoffs, and then I saw him, and I believed in him. I became a Grubauer fan. So defense and goaltending, I mean, I think that those are their strengths, and then I think their big weakness is who's night in and night out, who's going to score for this team, you know?
Yeah.
You have a bunch of 20-goal scorer guys, but you don't really have those 30, 40-goal scorers. And so I don't know how much you can accomplish. And I don't know. I think certain signings bothered me. You know, Jaden Schwartz got a big contract. I think that's weird for a guy his age. Like, this is clearly a guy whose best days are behind him.
With injury problems, too.
This is not some guy you give 4 or 5 year deals to. I don't care how good of a guy he is. You don't do that. And then the same goes for like a Alex Wenberg. I mean, he's not old, but he's also not worth $4.5 million a year. They're paying him $4.5 million a year. They seriously think this guy can be a top 6 centerman, which maybe he was 3 years ago. I know he had a good year then in Columbus, but I don't know. Like, here we are, Jaden Schwartz, 5-year, $27.5 million. So that's an AAV of above $5 a year, $5 million a year for 5 years. That's expensive.
To me sounds like crap.
That's bullshit. That's malarkey.
That's terrible.
And Wenberg got 3 years, $13.5 million, so $4.5 a year for 3 years.
Yeah, a lot of junk contracts.
Okay, Grubauer, fine. Like he's proven he's a good goalie, and like we learned with Vegas, you need a good goalie to start your expansion to give the fans some faith. You know, don't just throw in Craig Anderson every night. You know, you can't afford that.
Agreed.
But these other guys, where they've decided to allocate their money, other than the Alexiak deal, bothers me a little.
Yeah,
you're giving a little too much credit to these guys who don't deserve these long-term deals.
Yeah.
So that bothers me. And yeah, I don't know. I to your point about the picks, like, yeah, you could tank, but I think that's why they have all that salary cap space. It's now that they have so much cap room, you can take on lousy contracts from these teams who are up against the cap during this COVID environment, and then you'll get draft picks as compensation. You know?
Yeah. So hopefully they're not totally done
No.
in their dealings.
No,
yet.
I think there's with the salary cap and how much they valued that. I think the story is a lot left to be written here.
Yeah.
And speaking of the prospects, I mean their draft pick ended up being Matty Berniers. You know,
Yes,
fantastic
Sure,
first draft
sure.
pick.
Yeah.
You know, what better way to start off your franchise than a guy like him? High character centerman will certainly be a top 6 centerman in moving into his future.
Yeah.
And there you go. So I'd say it's a mixed bag, you know? Like they had a good draft. They got some really good guys like a Tanev. Pittsburgh's going to be kicking themselves for losing him.
Especially Burke and company.
Yeah.
They're going to be pissed.
You know,
Pissed.
other guys I know we watched a lot of Ranger games this past year. Colin Blackwell is a very underrated high character guy.
Yeah.
Eberle you mentioned earlier. Yanni Gord was one of probably my favorite player on Tampa Bay. So it really is a mixed bag. You made some really good picks, but then the way you allocated your money and gave your contracts out to guys, the guys you're putting faith in, so to speak, is leaving a lot of question marks. You know?
Yeah, and I believe that Yanni Gord is going to be missing some serious time with injury.
I think it's like a few months.
A few months, yeah. That could be enough to sink them early on.
But to your point, I don't think the playoff success matters too much.
Yeah.
If playoffs mattered to this team, they would have drafted Gabriel Landeskog. They would have drafted Vladimir Tarasenko. You know?
Carey Price.
And that was another story, right?
Right.
Another thing. Montreal making so much news this offseason.
Yeah, they love to make.
They
some
just
news.
know how. And so like there was a lot to unpack there, but I don't know. I think they're content being a middling team that has a chance at making the playoffs just because that Pacific Division is so darn weak, you know?
Yeah, you know what struck me with this particular expansion draft, and we have the luxury of saying that because we've been through two very recently. It didn't it was really kind of dry, if that's the right word to use. Like nothing moved the needle with any of their picks, with any of their players here, or even their moves. So it's a team that got a lot of hype, deservedly so, but I've really, since the draft, completely put them out of my mind in this offseason, which has been so crazy. So it's still going to be an absolute shock to me to see this jersey hit the ice in about a month's time. Less than a month now, thank God. So it's going to be fascinating. Very, very fascinating.
I mean, like, again, just on a closing note here, you look at the other teams in that division. I mean, are they better than, Vancouver?
No. I can confidently...
So if you're not better than Vancouver, then you're not ahead of a lot of teams, frankly.
Right.
If you don't think they're ahead of Vancouver, then they're certainly not ahead of, your Vegas, your Colorado, your Edmonton, right?
No.
Maybe you're just there with Calgary and San Jose and Anaheim,
Yeah. And you might edge some of those teams.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time with some good Vancouver guys, actually, and we talked a lot about the Canucks, and talking to them got me excited
about
for
the Canucks.
Them. Yeah.
Wow.
Because they've got Poulsen coming in, and they got Pettersson on a rebound, and Ekman Larson will show what he's got. That's another big move that was made. Them getting rid of that fucking 9th overall pick, which I never really agree with.
All those bad contracts, the Louis Eriksson, Troy Stetcher.
And the Garland coming through, too.
Yeah, I love him.
They're going to be a fascinating team. Podkolzin, their other young Swedish kid. They're going to be fascinating. I was excited for them, and I really think they can take a step this year.
Yeah, I think that the quote unquote trash teams in that division are probably just San Jose and Anaheim.
Yeah,
and
LA I have LA.
Oh, for sure.
Like they're going to be really good.
For sure. And we'll get into them with some of the big signings they made. But I think the only teams you can really put Seattle ahead of are those two Californian ones, San Jose and Anaheim. And then they're probably right on there they're probably on Calgary levels, right? So if they're right there, then your 4 playoff teams are probably Vegas, Colorado, the Oilers, and a fight between LA and Vancouver. That's probably the way you look at it.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll get more into that in future episodes where we prognosticate where everything's going to sit. But yeah, for the time being, I think we both agree they're on the Kraken, kind of a mixed bag,
Very mixed bag, yeah.
And what can you expect when all these teams are going in knowing they're going to try to pull the same Vegas shenanigans? Like, you can't blame Ron Francis that they don't want to make these side moves, right? There weren't that many side moves this year like there were in that Vegas year.
I don't know.
Teams decided we're just going to lose one player. We're not going to make these moves to keep multiple guys. They learned their lesson. They said, listen, Ronnie, you choose one player and that's it. And that's what they did.
And I guess they got wise from it from the last fucking round too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not seeing them sell many jerseys. Is all I'm saying. I'm not sure who you're buying.
And I don't know about the jersey. Seems
kind of jersey. I like the jersey.
Seems kind of bland.
I like the colors. I like the logo. I think it's cool.
I'm looking at it on Daily Faceoff for the first time. I'm just not used to seeing it, and I don't know.
I like it.
Not a fan.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, moving on to, of course, the other draft, the one we probably have more of an interest in. Listen, this isn't going to be like a typical draft episode where we go in depth on every single pick. No. Kyle and I talked off the record before the show. We're just going to go through some of the ones that intrigued us. Where exactly, where on the draft board did it get your attention? Where did things go off the rails? Where were you surprised? We'll only go into the first round. What did you make? What surprised you here? Where did you think the draft turned? Going in, where did you think things were going to there's always that part of the draft. This is where it really turns. Yeah. So where here did that moment come for you?
Well, the first 2 picks went really typically. Mm-hmm. We saw Owen Power and Matty Beniers, which was projected by a lot of different professionals out there. Number 3 did shock me.
Yeah.
That was a big jump. It was Mason McTavish at number 3. But, this guy was a guy who picked up a lot of steam late in the year. And if you really think about it, as soon as the draft happened, I was like, you know what? That makes a ton of sense. Anaheim picking Mason McTavish just makes a ton of sense. This is a big body, kind of a power forward type with a blistering wrist shot. And if you can kind of just picture him, he's a centerman, but he could also play wing, of course. And you could really just picture him next to a skilled guy like Trevor Zegras and think, wow, this is going to be a dynamic duo. Surprising foot speed on the guy too. He really impressed at that under 18. That was probably his big calling card because he's an OHL guy who went overseas to play, I believe in the Czech League, something like that. But he showed well against men, and then he just dominated the U18s.
He had a good Texas tournament.
Yes, exactly. So I'm a huge fan of the guy, and I guess Anaheim was as well, and he went number 3. They probably left some skill on the board, mind you. A guy like Eklund was a big favorite to go very high in the draft. But McTavish is a guy, he's going to be your playoff guy, the guy you can really lean on and play in many different roles. So I like the pick.
It's probably the definition of choosing a positional need, right? Because you already got the top 2D in Jamie Drysdale. You already got the star winger in Travis Zegras. Yeah. So what else do you address? You get the centerman.
Well, the big debate is whether Zegras will end up being a center or being a winger.
Well, maybe this is a sign of where they see him.
Maybe,
as a winger.
Yeah. Could very well be. Whatever they choose, I'm not sure they're going to split them up. I think they're going to be a pairing because it's seemingly they work so well together. But the next really kind of notable pick would be Luke Hughes at 4. Like that was a cool pick, obviously because of Jack Hughes, and you saw the reaction and you saw the whole deal. But
they pick that, and then you look at their blue line and you think, wow, now they have a pretty formidable offensive decor. You got Ty Smith, who was even a noticeable fantasy option on defense there for a long while. You got Luke Hughes now too, who some say might be the best defenseman between the Hughes brothers.
No.
Between Quinn and
No.
at the same age, they're saying yes. He's got a bit more size. He's still very dynamic skater, but it remains to be seen. So, I mean, the pedigree is there. I've got a lot of comments on what Jack Hughes will do this year too. And then I think this is looking a lot better in New Jersey, and I think that was a cool pick to see.
But they're probably, with that pick, they probably cemented themselves as one of your least favorite teams.
Oh, they're my least favorite team.
Yeah.
My least favorite team.
I mean, if you have both Hughes brothers, I'm not surprised you're going to say that.
Absolutely. And now me evolving as a Rangers fan, you're just trained to hate New Jersey as
the
well.
rival, yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Especially with the whole Hughes versus Lafreniere growing debate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the next one I want to go to is number 7. You mentioned Eklund earlier. So I'm, of course, the Sharks fan, or at least what little left of me is a Sharks fan.
You're hanging on for dear life.
It's the dark days right now. If Shane Wright doesn't go to the Sharks, I'm jumping off.
He's not.
And I don't know, I think this was a huge win for them. I mean, this was a guy who was supposed to go top 5, arguably the most skilled player in the entire draft.
Yeah.
And he goes number 7. And everything I read about this guy, high compete level, very skilled, good hands, good playmaker, just a high IQ, offensive hockey sense. It sounds like the kind of player San Jose needs. A bland offensive team needs a guy like this to kind of stir the drink, so to speak.
Yeah.
So this excited me, and we'll get into the next guy who we have a lot to say about, number 8. But this number 7, I was pleasantly surprised. It's a guy who doesn't know a lot about him. I read a lot going in, and I was like, good for San Jose getting this guy. They need some good news, and I think they landed a really good pick. And you see that Scott Wheeler where he ranks all drafted players, the top 50 drafted players, and who are under 23 or whatever, and William Eklund's in his top 10. Right. So that speaks volumes.
Well, this is a guy, Nick, you remember Lucas Raymond and Alex Holtz from last year. This guy had a better season than those two this year in the same league. Wow. So that speaks volumes.
Yeah, Swedish Elite League.
If Raymond went 4 overall last year, this guy went 7. Or 7 or 8, whatever it was. It's a good value there. And rumor has it that Buffalo was teetering between Owen Power and Eklund.
Wow.
From number 1.
Wow.
So that was...
No, and San Jose's GM, I know a lot of GMs after drafts, they like to throw the classic line, well, we had him first on our list.
Yeah.
Just to make themselves sound like they did a job well done.
Yeah.
But Dougie Wilson, he went out and said straight up, this was their number 2 guy on their board. They had Bernier's 1, and they had this guy 2.
Really?
They didn't even have Owen Power in the top 2. So yeah.
Well, that's fascinating because some notable names had Power not even just not number 1, but number 7. I don't know, man. I think he's a great number 1 pick. I think he's going to be a great defenseman. But I watched some highlight videos of someone really criticizing him, and you could see some pretty weird shit. So it'd be such a Buffalo move.
Yeah.
To not only ruin Darlene, Eichel, and now this guy.
Right. No, I don't disagree.
And then you pair in the Jack Quinn pick, and you're like, this could be the saddest fucking drafting team of all time.
Absolutely.
Oh. But that being said, I think he's going to be a really good defenseman.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good you're so bullish on him.
I'm normal on him.
Okay.
I'm normal on him.
Okay.
He's not my favorite number 1 pick, but he's going to be good.
Yeah, I don't know. When I heard Ray Ferraro call him Jay Bomeister, I kind of just rolled my eyes and said, meh.
Oh, God. He said that?
Yeah, he called him Jay Bomeister.
No.
So
I don't know. Jay Bouwmeester's good enough to make Team Canada Olympics, then sign me up.
yeah, but he's not like he's not like
He's not sexy at all.
He's not a sexy defenseman like Brant Clark. Am I right?
Oh. No, you're wrong. Actually,
that brings us to number 8. So of course, my beloved LA Kings draft the most divisive player in the entire draft.
Fuck.
Mr. Loudmouth, paled skin, Brant Clark.
Michael, shut your ears.
Yeah, exactly. Michael Robson, you can turn off that iPhone right now. You won't want to hear this.
So, yeah, I mean...
Where do we start with this guy?
We knew a little bit about Brant Clark all year long. We're like, this guy's an offensive defenseman. He can skate. He can see the lanes. He can do all this stuff. He's a typical offensive defenseman. He went over to the Czech league. He didn't do great. He did okay. But then he went to the under-18s, and that's something we actually watched. We actually tuned into. Mm-hmm. We put our scouting hats on. And boy, oh boy, did this guy fucking just...
He struggled.
Disappoint. Not only on his play on the ice was one thing, and it left a lot to be desired, especially for a guy of his billing. A guy I kind of billed before the year started to be a Bowen Byram type. He's not that. He is very much not that. He is an immature, knock-knee skating, just brat of a kid.
Kind of weak.
He
looks like you could just push him with a toothpick on the ice.
He's a weak
He hasn't filled out.
Kid. You know what? What really bugs me out of any player, and especially at this level, he's the kind of kid when he's on the power play and he's right up at the top of the point, he's slapping his stick on the ice whenever he wants
Beaver
the puck. All the time. Like, what if that's not the right play? What if this guy has another play in mind and now he has to give it to you, or else he looks like a dick? And he does that all the time, and it drove me nuts. It drove me absolutely. He's fucking slapping the thing. I'm like, is Shane Wright slapping his stick on the ice?
Right.
Do you think that player is directing play from a position of not seeing what's going on? No. It's so frustrating. And then the way he celebrated the win, he's just such a little shit, man. He's such a little shit.
Yeah, we weren't fans of that. The way the camera was on him after the game, and
he was like yelling and spraying everywhere. He was
no one else acted like that.
No,
but him.
No, he was out of control.
He got all the attention in a bad way, and not the way you want to get it.
He reeks of immaturity.
Yeah, and it hurts that he's going to this big city in LA. And
he's
now
so impressionable.
Yeah.
It's not even funny.
It's not the right fit for him as far as his city.
No.
That said, as the Kings fan, we needed to go defense in this draft. And everyone was saying, oh, well, they're going to go with one of the big D, you know? That being Power, Hughes, Edvinson, or Clark.
Correct.
And sure enough, the way the draft unfolded, of the 4 of them, Brant Clark was the last to go and fell right to LA. So we had no choice.
No choice.
And now the Hollywood script will play out, you know? Just like with Byfield, you know, you have these guys. And Byfield, I've gotten a little more cozy with. I think he's he's a pleasant guy. I was harsh on his character earlier last year, a little less so now. But this Brant Clark is in a class of his own as far as just making an ass of himself on national television. So I don't know what's gonna happen here, you know.
Yeah,
I'm like, as the Kings fan, I'm rooting for him, but at the same time, I'm not rooting for him, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And you said it right away when they drafted him. You said in the Facebook group, you're just like, the Kings fucked up.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Quickly on Byfield, to me, just super quick, to me, he's really grown in my eyes as a guy, simply because in the off season, when it's dark and there's no electricity and you're looking for something, you're looking for any sort of hockey news, I'm always trying to figure out what these young kids' off-season routine is. And I was always checking in on Lafreniere. And he's such a tight book. I couldn't find a single lick of his anything training related. I only saw him golf. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
But Byfield, he's in with Gary Roberts. He's in the fucking BioSteel camp. He's doing all this stuff. He's like doing the McDavid regime. And I'm like, damn, I got good hopes for this kid this year. I'm like, at least I know. I don't know what Lafreniere's doing, but I know Byfield is doing the right things this summer. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, go on Gary Roberts' Instagram story right now. You'll see Byfield just ripping workouts. So that's really good to see. And to me, he's earned some respect over this offseason.
So he's not in LA. He's in Ontario this summer? Okay, good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Okay, moving on from the Kings, I think the next one that kind of raised my brow was number 10.
Yes, that's
Pierre Maguire's first ever, and we'll get into Pierre. That should have been our lead, but we decided to put it near the end.
Yeah. Pierre
Maguire's first draft with a team.
What a good way to put it.
Yeah. And they go out, and boy, do they drop a deuce. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, number 10, Tyler Boucher.
Oh, boy.
They had so many guys they could have went with this pick. Yeah. So many pundits in Ottawa, your Ian Mendeses of the world, were saying they're going to go goalie. Yeah. He had two franchise goalies, Sebastian Casa and Jesper Wallstad, there for the pickings. Or hey, you want a goal scorer? You want a sniper? Chaz Lucius?
Yeah.
Or you want a high character checker like a Brendan Othman? They're all there. They're still there.
Even a Cole Sillinger.
And they literally go with a what's projected to be a bottom 6 checker with a top 10 pick.
Fuck.
So please explain where Pierre Maguire went with this one.
Honestly, I feel like Pierre Dorion is a little in over his head. And I'll tell you why I think that. We recently got a beautiful soundbite from the character that went along the lines of, the rebuild is over.
Right.
Did you catch that one?
Yeah, the other day.
So, in my mind, Pierre Dorion is waddling into his office, coming right off the subway. He's going
with his
up
backpack.
to his office, with his backpack. Yeah. He's going right. He's going right up to his office, and he's sitting down. He's looking at his roster, his projected, his pool. Oh. He's going, well, we got all the skill in the world.
Right.
All we need is checkers. We need to be a playoff team.
Right.
So the guy is in over his head. He thinks he's done. He thinks this thing is cooked for talent.
Right.
And he thinks, well, all I need now is a good third line guy.
Right.
So he picks Tyler Boucher as a third line guy. When honest to God, there was so much more talent in the board. And let's be honest, you could have had Tyler Boucher probably late in the first to maybe early in the second. If you wanted him that bad, trade up for him late in the first. It's just so friggin' ridiculous. And Ottawa was on such a roll, too, with
after
their
last
drafting.
year.
They were just killing
last year, yeah.
And they just blew it. And I'd love to be able to look at their team and say, wow, I'm so excited. Mm-hmm. But now I have to dial back a little bit. And I don't know why I should have to do that.
It's funny because guys like him are guys you find on the waiver wire or the trade market or free agency. They're disposable every year. And yet you don't spend valuable draft capital on bottom 6 checkers.
No.
You know, you find them in college. No. You find them in the ECHL. You scout and you sign these guys on just like not like just on little deals here and there. You don't spend a top 10 pick on them. And that's why I think it was a head scratcher.
Like the very, very 100% best this kid can do is turn into a Tom Wilson, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm any sort of team, I would even say it's tough for me to trade a 10th overall pick for Tom Wilson. A lot of teams would, don't get me wrong, but this kid has to absolutely hit every single peg possible, turn into Tom Wilson, and then maybe you'd get value out of him. But that's such a long shot.
And poor kid too. I mean, so much pressure on him now. You know, a guy who probably shouldn't have that much pressure. is now forced into this uncomfortable position of having to live up to this hype of a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
With the likes of a Thomas Chabot, a Kachuk, who did they draft last year? I mean,
Sanderson.
Yeah, Sanderson.
And Stutzel.
He has no business being compared to these guys, but now naturally he will be because he was a top 10 pick from this draft.
Exactly.
It's a shame.
And don't get me wrong, I still love the outlook of the Senators. It's just, I don't know how you can go into the season and say the rebuild is done.
Right.
Like, what I want from you is to give, be what you were last year. Get another shot at the draft lottery this year, and then consider calling it done.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be a really exciting team. I love their decor going forward. Sanderson, Chabot, and then guys like Brandstrom and company like that. That's a really solid decor. Amazing. I'm a huge Brady Tkachuk guy. Batherson I love. I've streamed him in fantasy all the time. I think he's a great pick this year, by the way, late in the draft.
Well, who's that other guy who was really high in fantasy too? The centerman.
Norris. Yeah.
During the fantasy playoffs, you're like, you buy into the Norris stock,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's so many unknowns here. Shane Pinto at second line center, very unknown. Connor Brown is a middling second line winger. Colin White, what is he? I'm not sure.
Still don't know.
Logan Brown wants out. He has requested a trade. What's that about? There's just so many unknowns. Like you have the center position. If Stutzel can move to the center, great. But if not, there's a lot of unknowns there.
Sure. And then as far as the draft, there's a few. I don't really want to deep dive into these too much, but I guess the last ones in the first round that kind of caught my eye were the goalies going 15th and 20th respectively. The big debate was where would they fall. Yeah. Funny enough, it was Casa going ahead of Wallstead, which
no one saw that.
Yeah, kind of surprising. For a guy like me who would follow Wallstead since the Hlinka 2 years ago, that was the guy I had on my radar. I just always liked him. Very technically sound Swedish goaltender. Yeah. And he didn't go till 20, and that's why I have to applaud Minnesota. That's a team that was in that goalie market for quite a few years now. They missed out on that Russian last year. Mm-hmm. And they finally got their goalie here. They waited, and they got him at 20, which was fantastic. And then I also, this Casa guy, I don't know much about him, so I'm curious to see how his career unfolds compared to Wallstead, who I know less about. And then I think the Rangers did great yet again. Brendan Othman, I love.
I do too.
At the tournament, the Texas tournament, he really shined.
So
character guy, good interviews. I'm so glad he's on the Rangers. Another great draft for the Rangers.
So perfect example. Why the fuck didn't Ottawa pick this guy? Yeah. You have talent there, and he's a grinder. He can
play in a top 6 or bottom 6.
Blow me away.
Whereas this Boucher guy clearly has a ceiling that's already been established. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. But on Sebastian Cossa, you mentioned you don't know. I did a little bit of digging on this kid. He's a really fascinating subject. So not only is he 6'6", so right away you think Steve Yzerman, who built the whole Vasilevsky train. Vasilevsky being a big goalie who has great fundamentals and all that. Sebastian Cossa is 6'6". He's massive, and he's a huge chirp artist.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Huge. So he's very overconfident, which I think as a goalie,
kind of like a Fleury.
Yes, as a goalie, I think is a very valuable asset to have. He's a loud goalie. You're gonna see him front and center in the World Juniors this year. It's gonna be Shane Wright, Sebastian Cossa, and likely Caden Gooley leading the defense. So it's going to be really interesting to see him there. And Nick, in the WHL, he had a 940 save percentage. So
impressive.
The stats line up. The confidence is there. The body is. Even if he's not great technically, he's a big goalie. So it's hard for him to fail.
Yeah, we've seen with Vasilevsky, right?
Yeah, it's hard for him to fail. So I mean, I love what Detroit got out of this first round. That Edvinson guy in the first pick they had, pair him with Moritz Seider, who's going to be probably in the running for the Calder this year.
Mm.
He's the best. Some would say he was the best player outside of the NHL, period. And then you have this goalie going forward. Like, he's doing it right. Yzerman knows what he's doing. He's absolutely doing it right. So I love what Detroit did with that.
Yeah, you got to
And
be
ballsy.
patient. You
Ballsy
got to be
to
patient
go-
with that team.
Yeah, ballsy to go with this unknown name versus the Wallstead, which, you know, the fan base would have been like, oh, we know this guy, you know? But that's what Yzerman does. He goes with the guy he likes.
Yeah, and then I heard a lot of last name I'll mention. Lots of praise for what Winnipeg did. They got Chad Lucius at 18.
Right.
You like that? So they got Perfetti last year, one skilled guy who kind of dropped, and now they get another skilled guy who kind of drops.
Yeah.
So is this the potential for kind of a sneaky pick? And in 4 years, will we look back at this like that was kind of sneaky?
Yeah, this could be really sneaky. A lot of people say this guy is one of the better goal scorers of the draft. And I've heard his name,
If not the best.
yeah, dating all the way back to early 2020. I've heard this name around. So I don't have a huge scouting report on him, but I know he's got name brand value. And to get that kind of guy mid to late first is good value to me.
Yeah.
And I think what really derailed him was an injury that kind of mucked his season up. And if not, he might have had like a top 10 level season. So I think that's a good little pick by Winnipeg.
All right.
Perfetti, I don't know. Like, the jury's still out. I'm not a huge Perfetti guy myself, but I think he did pretty well last year in the AHL. So we'll see. We'll see.
He might be in the World Juniors yet again, right?
I would love that.
Apparently,
he's got a lot to
at
prove.
this most recent summer camp, he was one of the most talented guys who stuck out.
Good.
So, yeah, we'll see. And yeah, that's all I got for the draft as far as guys I want to talk about.
Might as well finish off with Logan Mailloux, last month, Montreal 31.
Oh, yes, of course.
Quick, we're not the authority on this type of thing, and I'm sure it's been talked about ad nauseum, but yeah, pretty disappointing that they picked him. That being said, from like that side of the story has been covered a ton.
Yeah,
Obviously, we're disappointed. However, I know a good reputable draft guy who said this is actually one of the best defensemen in the class. Like, talent-wise, he is a mid to early first round talent. So value-wise, there's value there. He just got suspended by the OHL indefinitely, likely to be reviewed at the turn of the new year. So I'm sure if he does the right things, shows his receipts, does the right things, he should be reinstated for the OHL, and he'll join the London Knights.
Not a place to be if you're if you got a history like him.
Right.
Not a good city to be in. Send him out to Sarnia.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, yeah, that'll be a little hiccup in his development. Like, it's just a headache that is really kind of frustrating to have as a Montreal fan. But, you know what? Hopefully he pans out. Hopefully he turns into a good defenseman. But, yeah. We're not the authority on this topic.
No, I don't want to spit it. Like, we could spit into our microphones right now and go ham about this.
Yeah.
Disrespecting the victim kind of stuff. But it's been not that it's been overplayed, because it is a serious subject that deserves its time. It certainly does.
Yeah.
But we're not going to lend any more valuable insight that no one else has shared to this point,
Yeah.
What else do we have to contribute to this argument?
Yeah.
It's rightfully so. It's had its time.
Yeah.
And we frankly aren't going to make time for our show to elaborate on that anymore,
Yeah.
If you want to listen to people talk about that, it's out there.
It's a click away.
It is a click away. It's a click away, and it's there for you. And that's not undermining, the merit that story has had, because rightfully so, it was kind of a a gutless act by the Canadians. But you know, if you want to listen to people talk about that, it's there, and we're just we're not political here. We're not going to get into that. That's kind of been our identity from day one. So yeah. Unless you have any lasting thoughts, I think
not really. No.
Yeah.
I think that says it. That says it.
Yeah. So moving on. There's a couple. I mean, of course, you know, we kind of broke down our show into like, you know, off-season draft, Kraken, playoff stuff. So that leads us to the off-season, which is probably the most biggest thing to cover here. There's so much. It was an unprecedented off-season. It was an unprecedented August 1st or whatever the day was.
Yeah.
I mean, my phone was lighting up. I was on vacation in British Columbia. I was checked out. I was not on Twitter. I was not checking The Athletic. I couldn't care less what was going on. But you guys in our Facebook group, you, Joe, and Josh, were just, I swear to God, I'd reload my phone and there'd be 80 notifications. It would just be 80 things.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. It all started with Marc-Andre Fleury. You know, I think that was kind of the first big bombshell that dropped, you know?
Yeah.
Vegas shipping him out to Chicago, him saying he wasn't going to play for Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was dramatic. I wasn't
winning
surprised.
the Vezina, too.
Right after you win the Vezina.
Crazy.
What kind of bullshit is that?
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. That's the perfect way to put it. And it's pretty surreal. But now everything's been settled. You know, he's going to start there. He's going to be their starting goalie. Everyone's happy. That's good for him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was huge. You guys were talking a lot about that. I mean, what else? I mean, and I won't go too much into that because that had the writings on the wall. Like I said, after the gaffe in Game 3 in Montreal, that was bound to happen. They had to get rid of him. They had to free up that cap space.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be done. I mean,
well, even just staying on Chicago, you got Duncan Keith going to Edmonton.
Yep.
In a strange head scratcher of a deal.
Yeah. I mean, the rumor was he only wanted to play in Western Canada, right? So
which is also, like, when do you hear that? That's really odd.
His options were really limited.
Yeah.
And that was one of the teams that kind of lent a hand out for him. And that guy, that GM in Edmonton, he's been getting a lot of shit for stuff like that, you know? They've had an odd offseason. That's for sure. Ethan Bear, a guy
went
who
the other way.
Yeah, he's gone, and that was a D. They really
and they gave a third.
That was
so weird.
And then yes, they do get Zach Hyman. They do get the treasured Maple Leafs player. You know, and we'll get into the implications for the Leafs later on.
Yeah.
But the fact it was at a 7-year deal has gotten a lot of criticism too, right? A guy who plays that very hard-nosed style, how sustainable is that for 7 years?
Yeah.
So, re-signing Tyson Barrie? Like, give me a fucking break. Like, is this guy really the stud defenseman that... You know, you can just bring him back. Is this the future? Is this Connor McDavid's running mate on the power play for the next 4 years?
I mean, you had him in fantasy. Did he not serve
I was happy.
you well?
I was fine.
Did he serve
But
you?
I still think he's a very flawed defenseman.
Oh, he's a flawed,
I think he's extremely flawed.
Of course. However, I mean, if you just play him last pairing minutes on even strength and power play... He got the most points out of all defensemen.
He's Keith Yandel. He's basically a Keith Yandel.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
I don't know either.
And I don't know why you're giving out 4-year terms to that guy.
He got the most points out of all defensemen, which is just
amazing. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Could you imagine if an actual great defenseman played on that blue line, on that power play? Mm-hmm. That'd be crazy.
And then the more head scratchers. Mike Smith, 2 years, $4.4 million. Like, fuck me.
I will never understand the goalie situation there.
They still haven't solved it.
We cannot wrap our head around that.
No.
They better fix that, or else they're not going to make it.
Yeah.
They're not going to make it.
That should be where you're prioritizing. You should be in the Grubauer runnings for him.
Yeah.
Or the Kemper runnings for him.
Yes.
Or Nedeljkovic. Nedeljkovic goes for
Fuck.
Nedeljkovic goes for Jonathan Bernier in a third-round pick. You're telling me Edmonton doesn't have Jonathan Bernier in a third-round pick in their arsenal to swap for Nedeljkovic?
If Kenny Holland was working the phones for a goalie, he would have figured something out with these guys.
Yeah.
He wasn't. Why was he not prioritizing that? Why was he on the phone like completely possessed by getting Duncan Keith and Zach? Don't get me wrong. I love the Zach Hyman move. It's going to be great. But if you're spending too much time on things you don't need to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
Goalies is the biggest thing. Mike Smith was great in the fucking regular season. He was dog water in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
He was terrible.
Yeah.
And I really don't mind the forward group I'm looking at here. You get Warren Fogle mixed into that little mix here. That's not too bad, but honest to God, get a fucking goalie here.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. And
It really is, yeah.
Braden Holtby's in Dallas as the third stringer. You better make a move for this guy.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of goalies, I mean, I think this would be a nice point to touch on just the big carousel that was goalies. I mean, I think it starts with kind of what the Leafs in Carolina did. It looks like they kind of just swapped goalies. So you had Mrazek going to the Leafs. That's a 3-year deal, $3.8 million AAV. And then you had Freddie Anderson going to Carolina. That's a 2-year deal, shorter term, but a higher AAV at $4.5 million. So, bit of a goalie swap there. The Leafs opting to go with a guy they're going to have to pay less per year, rightfully so, given how much they're tied up with their cap situation, but more term. Which, and then of course Carolina, the bigger head scratcher. I mean, you're not willing to pay Nedeljkovic $3 million a year, but you are willing to pay Freddie Anderson $4.5.
And personally, I'd rather have Nedeljkovic, the younger guy who's got great numbers. He's in the running for the Calder last year. That was Carolina's a ridiculously managed team.
They've taken the title of the team that doesn't honor loyalty or character or just what the fans like in a player. You know, they're not there for the fans. They're not there for the intangibles. No. They're purely there. They're the most frugal team in the league. And they have no honor for like allegiances or it's very cutthroat. It's a very cutthroat organization. Yeah. That's kind of the feeling I get.
What seems to me is like there's an owner there who doesn't give a fuck about hockey. He's like, I want to turn a profit. Yeah. What can we do? Yeah. Offer sheet cockney. Sure. Yeah. Go for it. Yeah. Like, this guy's an idiot. This franchise, I had a lot of respect for them, but it turns out Don Cherry was right. Right. The whole thing has just gone out of control. First the Nedeljkovic thing. But then, I mean, I guess it's a great time to transition into the Kotkaniemi offer sheet signing. You know, like, I was just saying it's a great time to transition to the offer sheet signing. I mean, because we're on the topic of Carolina. Right, and being cutthroat. And now this Mickey Mouse hockey team, which has just turned itself into a clown show.
Where's your mic?
It's not doing too well. Do you mind putting yours in the middle, actually?
Yeah, so we all know what happened last year with Sebastianity Aho. Yeah. Montreal offer sheets them a number that is relatively fair, relatively relaxed, and they match it right away. No drama. But now we have them coming around, and I'm sure you guys know all about this, coming around and offer sheeting Kotkaniemi $6.1 million for a 1-year deal, and totally throwing a wrench into the Canadiens' plans. Now, a lot of things come together to make this such a vulnerable situation because Montreal obviously was really weak at the center position. They're relying on this Kotkaniemi kid to hopefully step up. They just lost Deneau. They just lost a bunch of guys. And then he's a kid who's got a top billing, who hasn't performed well, certainly doesn't earn 6.1 million. So they're offering him something around 2.5, something kind of, in line with what his numbers have suggested. And then Carolina comes up, offers him way too much, and then goes off to offer the fucking $20 signing bonus just to rub it in, just to make it a marketing ploy. This is absolutely not for the team. I don't care what the fucking GM or the owner says. This is not to make the team better. It's to fucking sell tickets as to what it is. Now kids are going to be buying Kotkaniemi jerseys because they screwed that team in Canada. That's what this is about, Nick.
That's all it's about.
This is all it's about. And you get all this shit done. You're not even going to play him at center. He's now a left winger on your team. So it's like, did you really have all this faith in him? Did you really see a kid who's looking to take the next step? No. You're going to put him on the wing. He's probably going to put up 40 to 50 points, something very underwhelming. And then you're going to sign him to what? Like a $4 million deal, unless he tenders the qualifying offer and forces you to pay him 6.1. Like, to me, what this has done, Nick, it's so ridiculous because you're now on the hook for 6.1 for a mediocre player, and it stops you. It doesn't enable you to get a talented rental at the deadline. And now they don't have that option, or they have it to a lesser degree. So it's like, what is fucking going on here? To me, it's a clown show.
Yeah, it's a spiteful team in Carolina pushing back, and it's Mark Bergevin having to react and make the best out of a very shitty situation, right? And I think that's what you didn't even mention the name Dvorak, right? I mean, that's where they're headed now, right? Who is Christian Dvorak? Apparently, the Habs are sold this guy's a top 6 centerman. I know Arizona doesn't get a lot of play here in Canada. So to a lot of people, this is just some name, but this is the guy. Jake Evans is not a top 6 center, So if this is the guy, his replacement, so to speak, you lost Philip Deneau, you lost Kotkaniemi. Where's your faith in their center depth here with Christian Dvorak as your number 2 center?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you where it is. It's not as good as it was a year ago, but it's a lot better than it was a month ago. Because I think Christian Dvorak is a better player than Kotkaniemi. But I do really, really think they're going to miss Philip Deneau in a lot of ways. What I will acknowledge based on their offseason moves is, yes, Christian Dvorak, I think, can be a very competent second-line center. I think he's going to be a 50, 55-point guy. He's actually a power play specialist, which I was actually surprised to learn. As a net front guy, as like that bumper position, he's actually a specialist in that role. So that fills a need, settling that anemic Montreal power play. And then you add in an addition like Mike Hoffman as a trigger man on said power play. And all of a sudden you've got we've got Caulfield, Hoffman, and Christian Dvorak settling this. This could be a pretty good situation. So it's not ideal by any means losing Deneau, but having Dvorak there gives me a lot of faith. And what I will say, Nick, and I heard this on the Montreal radio too, and I totally vibed with it. The Montreal winger depth is the strongest it's been in a many, many, many years. You have 3 lines of wingers that could not only put up each 20 goals, but they are each 60-plus point players. Left side, you have Mike Hoffman, Jonathan Drouin, and Tyler Toffoli. Right side, you have Cole Caulfield, Brendan Gallagher, Josh Anderson. That's a formidable winger depth. So that's really impressive to me. Nick Suzuki is going to, as we saw last year's playoff, going to emerge as a first-line center. And then you got like Matthew Perreault and a Cedric Paquette plugging into the bottom 6. Corey Perry's going to hurt big time. Sure. We love Corey Perry. That sucks. That sucks big time. But we're going to get over it. And for the record, Weber's out all year, which we talked about. but he was shit in last year's regular season because he's on his last legs, and he really showed up for the playoffs. But I don't think he would have contributed much either way in this current regular season. So, yeah.
You sound too optimistic. Like, it sounds like this is like, make no mistake, this has been a pretty disastrous offseason for the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh, I disagree completely.
You had a great playoff run. You made it to the Stanley Cup final, and then all these shite things happened. The Carey Price drama, Logan Mailloux drama. Offseason, you lose Philip Deneau. Shea Weber's injured for the full year. You sign Mike Hoffman, who is undisputably a hot dog, who doesn't contribute anything on even strength and is only going to contribute on the power play. Which, I mean, to Montreal's point, that's somewhere they need to improve. In the playoffs, that was an embarrassment, their power play. So the fact he's going to be there to try to bolster it is great. Jonathan Drouin drama, him moving away from the team. Lots of people were saying he wasn't going to come back. You know, your jersey was going to lose a lot of value potentially, but it looks like he will be back, and that's just water under the bridge right now. But the point is, this team enters this year, I mean, losing Corey Perry, worse, and then, of course, Kotkaniemi, worse than they were against Tampa in the Stanley Cup final. You can't deny that.
I disagree completely. I disagree. If you just simply look at the regular season perspective, you're gonna get a full season of Cole Caulfield, right? We know what this kid can do. He's probably gonna put up 30 goals this year, based on what we saw and what we've been seeing in his career. Mike Hoffman is no joke. Let's not. He's a hot dog. He's an idiot. Player. I know. He's an idiot. I don't like the player, but for the team, this guy is one of the top 10 best goal scorers of the last 5 years. There's no denying it. Statistically, there's no denying it. He's a 30-goal guy. So now you got two 30-goal guys. Okay, now let's add in Tyler Toffoli. He was on pace for 40 goals last year. So it's like, where does it? Brendan Gallagher is easily a 20-plus goal guy. There's a lot to like here, and Jonathan Drouin. I don't even know where to start. What I will say about Jonathan Drouin is coming out on like a French documentary to kind of describe what happened to him, and that's coming out on the 20th of September.
Nice.
So buckle right up and tune in. But it looks like he's back, and he even said he might want to play center as well. So, hey, fuck, it's going to be a great team. They're going to make the playoffs, I guarantee it.
And you maintain that Marc Bergevin made the right call by not re-signing KK?
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't... Absolutely. I was never a fan of KK from the moment they drafted him. I was that lady's meme where she was like blown away by the pick. That was me. This was a total ruination of a draft. It was born from the idea of not having enough center depth in the beginning. They didn't have enough center depth, so they tried to draft from a position of need, and they ended up not taking the best player available. And we've figured it out. His draft year sucked, man. Like he was a mid to late first round pick, and then he had a good under 18 team, a good under 18 tournament, and he fucking vaulted up. I do not understand how you could put so much value in such a tournament. Like blows me away. I never saw the skill level. I never saw any sort of talent that would make him a third overall pick. He doesn't move the needle. He never has for me. So in a lot of ways, this is a relief, and I like Dvorak better, all in all, to be honest.
And like the nature of an offer sheet, the fact that the player has to actually decide to sign it, does that speak volumes of just the personalities and the attitude whittling around here? The fact he was maybe a little a little unnerved by the fact he was sat in that Tampa series. Maybe he already had one foot out the door. Maybe him and Bergie weren't getting along. Maybe the way they handled his development wasn't great. I know he's been on the record saying, quote unquote, they didn't do a great job doing that. So maybe there was some bad blood there, and this is the best for everyone. Maybe he just didn't want to be there. Is that kind of the take you have?
Yeah, I mean, for the record, I'm with Gord Miller and saying, yes, he was absolutely rushed into his development. And I absolutely think that the way things have gone for him, that he got a little impatient, got a little upset with the way things were going, and he wanted a change of scenery. Now, has he shown enough to deserve that kind of clout and that ability to make these kind of decisions? I don't think so. I guess the situation came up with Carolina, but this guy hasn't shown me enough to be able to wave his dick around and say, hey, I deserve so much more opportunity. He really hasn't. Like, you drafted a subpar player, he gave you a subpar performance, and you sat him a little bit, and then he got a little upset. The worst thing that could have happened to his career was him being drafted 3rd overall. If he was drafted 10th, he would have had more time to develop, and he would have been in a better place today. It's just a shame it went this way.
As Arpon Basu said on The Athletic, the situation Marc Bergevin found himself in, very akin to, it's a bit like a girl who meets a new guy and breaks up with her boyfriend just before it's time to renew the lease on their apartment. Is it worth it for the guy to convince her to stick around even if they will simply be roommates from then on? Does that analogy make any sense?
Honestly, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that.
I did too. I had to read it several times. But I guess his point is, it's like you're kind of stuck together even though you don't really want to be with each other, and so it would just be awkward to keep things going as quote unquote roommates, or in this case as teammates, despite him really deep down his feelings not really wanting to be there. He's probably happy to go where all those Finns are, in Carolina.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's enough of Montreal. I mean, there's a few more I want to touch on here before we move on from the off season. We talked about Carolina. And again, we didn't even touch on Tony DeAngelo. I mean, so the guy you're wearing their jersey right now, the guy who literally punched Georgiev in the face.
I don't know if it went like that.
Or did Georgiev punch him in the face?
Yes.
Yeah. So literally the guy who got punched in the face by the Rangers goalie is now back in the NHL for this decrepit, soulless, characterless franchise in Carolina. So does this just make them even more of the villains of the NHL?
You never thought the day would come because of the whole, funny celebration thing, but they are not the innocent team they once were. These guys are the villains, man. Like, this is okay. The owner, Tom Dundon, is the new Eugene Melnyk. And they're this fucking Tony DeAngelo situation. They're the new Montreal Canadiens. Like, it's crazy. They are the villain in multiple different fronts. And the fact they barely paid Rod Brindamore, they had to fight tooth and nail, or Rod had to fight tooth and nail to get them to pay him. It's a joke. It's just, they're a joke, man. And I don't think you can find success this way. And they're a team I cannot wait to see fail, as bad as that sounds.
Yeah. I hope they just annually lose in the second round, like they have their whole kind of legacy these past few years. And then, a couple more things. Lots of trades. Some big ones. Lots to touch on. You mentioned Vancouver and all those Vancouverites you interacted with when you were out there sojourning through the West. Defenseman Oliver Ekman Larson and right winger Connor Garland to Vancouver. Coyotes receive a first-round pick in 2021. That's the number 9th pick. Second-round pick that they used on Gunther. We didn't touch on him. Second-round pick in 2022. Seventh-round pick in 2023. Left winger Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, Antoine Roussel. And Arizona retains 12% of Ekman Larsson's salary. So you're saying they were bullish on those Vancouverites? Because, I mean, Connor Garland is great, but you're saying they still see life in this Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They don't see this guy as just a bot. Because clearly Arizona just saw him as a guy signed to a shitty contract with a shit ton of years left, lots of salary. What is it, $9 million a year? And then they just need to get rid of his salary, and they're getting picks in replacement for it. So you're saying these Vancouverites aren't really looking at it that way? They see this as a guy who's still got some shelf life?
Yeah, the way that we were talking about it together was that Arizona is a place where a lot of guys can get complacent in their career. You know, they can get in a rut. Like, if the team's bad, no one cares what your performance is because there's no fans there and there's no expectation, that you can just fall into a rut. And I think Ekman-Larsson coming to Vancouver or any medium to big market team is going to give him a bit of a resurgence. Is he going to be top flight Ekman-Larsson? No, I don't think he's going to be that. But in a second pairing role with mentoring minutes, like 18 minutes a night, I think he could be a valuable guy. I mean, I think behind Quinn Hughes and playing with a Tyler Myers type of guy, like, I think it could be a good match here. But he's the secondary piece in the deal. I think Connor Garland, who just reminds me of a farmer in a lot of ways. Like, he's just a consistent worker, work ethic no matter where he goes. That's the kind of guy I see him as. Is like, he's a Brendan Gallagher in a lot of ways, but he's got a ton of skill. This guy's just he's a spark plug, and it's going to really invigorate this Vancouver group, which has been, they've seen some runs, they've seen some peaks and valleys, and I think this is a stabilizing force. And what we talked about with the Vancouver guys, which I totally vibed with them on, is that Bo Horvat as a leader is one of the top leaders in this league. He just sets a perfect example. He's there for all the right reasons, and he's very much the new Jonathan Toews of today's NHL. In a lot of ways, perhaps not to that skill level, but in a lot of other intangible ways.
And then, of course, the other big trade, Blackhawks receive Seth Jones, a first-round pick, and a 6th for defenseman Adam Boqvist, a first, another first. You don't often see 2 first-round picks going, 2021 first and a 2022 first, and a 2021 second-round pick for Seth Jones. So lots of things swapping there. Of course, Columbus made the most of that. They had 3 first-round picks after making that trade. And Seth Jones joins his brother Caleb Jones, who used to be on Edmonton, in Chicago. So all of a sudden, Chicago looks like a team that's making a run, trading for Flower and then now trading for Seth Jones and all that salary they're taking on. So what do you see this as? Chicago seeing as we got one more little bullet left in the chamber with Kane and Taves, and we're going to bring home a franchise defenseman and a goalie who just won the Vezina to try to get over the hump here?
Yeah, it's tough. A lot has to break their way. Seth Jones, I fully agree with that statement. Franchise defenseman, he's to me one of the top 10 best ones you can possibly get out there. But when you see what it's surrounded by, a Calvin DeHaan, a Jake McCabe, Connor Murphy, there's not a whole lot else on there. So there's still work to do on the blue line. Marc-Andre Fleury as a fit in Chicago, I adore that fit in Chicago. I think that's so righteous. I think that could be a really good partnership down the line. Their center depth is very interesting. Again, question marks, a lot of variability. Jonathan Toews was out all last year with God knows what kind of condition. What kind of player is he going to be? Big fantasy question too, as a late round guy. I don't know what kind of guy Jonathan Toews is anymore as a hockey player. Kirby Dach is a guy I'm going to be targeting late in the draft. This guy looked like a absolute stud going into World Junior Camp, he looked like he was like going to be a world beater. And then he got that injury, missed some time, came back, was subpar, so-so. But a lot of pundits are saying he's going to be the new number one center there. Kane and DeBrincat on his wings. That could be just an awesome match. So the defense, everything, I like the top end of the forwards. I like the top end of the defense. I like the top end of the goaltending. But depth in each position, I have a lot of questions about. And they're going to have to do a lot of work. They're going to have to do a lot of proving to make sure that that they're ready for a run here. Because they've invested a lot to make a run. They got a lot of work to do to get there.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I always got the impression that management team there has always been is so long. It's like Pittsburgh's. It's like Malkin and Crosby. So long as we got Kane and Taves, you need to field a competitive team every year. We're not doing a rebuild with these guys on our cap, you know? Yeah. And I just got that impression. So it makes sense based on their MO there. Moving on, another trade. Colorado traded for Darcy Kemper. I want your thoughts on this, given you're the big fan here. This is courtesy of The Athletic. And, you know, we've often talked on this show about how much of a genius Joe Sakic is, you know? Everything he touches it turns into just pixie dust, you know? Yep. And you look at here, courtesy of The Athletic. Must have been a shock when the Avalanche looked up from locking up captain Gabriel Landeskog to a long-term deal to discover their Vezina Trophy finalist netminder Philip Grubauer had signed with the Kraken, and all the other goaltenders they might have been interested in had gone elsewhere. That forced GM Joe Sakic into scramble mode to land a goaltender. That late Wednesday they did just that, acquiring Darcy Kemper from the Coyotes. Kemper has 1 year left on his current deal at $4.5 million, but it cost the Avalanche a first-round pick in 2022 and defensive prospect Connor Timmins, the 32nd pick in 2017. Even with Arizona retaining $1 million of Kemper's salary, not sure this is how they mapped it out in the Avalanche war room. Do you agree with that statement? Kind of they made the best of a shitty situation that they really didn't foresee. And Joe Sakic, for the first time in his tenure, got kind of blindsided.
I don't know. I don't think blindside is a bit of an extreme way to put it. I think that Colorado wanted a top goalie from this free agent, mess that it was. And for the record, I think Colorado got the best goalie that was moved in this offseason. Better than Marc-Andre Fleury, better than all these guys. I think Darcy Kemper is going to be the backup to Carey Price on Team Canada. I think he's one of the better goalies in this league. Was the price rich? Yeah, it was rich. I mean, the 2022 second, I'm not overly concerned about because it's going to be the 32nd pick overall. But losing Connor Timmins does hurt. He was a 2017 guy. He was a guy that came up in the Makar draft. He was a guy I really liked. And in fact, last playoff, he was a guy that I was calling for them to play more. I was like, you got to get more Connor Timmins on the ice against this Vegas team because this guy's the only one really with that big body presence and doing that kind of stuff. So to lose him sucks big time. But it does make sense in a way, Nick, because they have to make room for a Bowen Byram. They have this guy waiting in the wings. He's not going to be waiting forever. This is his time. And there was no room for both Byram and Timmins in that top four. So with Devon Taves, Cale Makar locked down, you've got Sam Girard locked down. There's no room for Connor Timmins in a top four spot. It's either Byram or Timmins, and you chose the correct answer, which is Bowen Byram. Yeah, who is Connor Timmins on a bottom pairing defenseman? Nothing, It's not where he belongs. So at the end of the day, it was the right move if you consider the capital that they had waiting in the wings. And I love Darcy Kemper. He's a Saskatoon native, everybody. Like, you need to get so hyped for this guy. He's like, as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to be like a 935 on this Colorado team. It's going to be insanity how good this guy's going to be.
I think it's fascinating how reports from The Athletic said that before they'd made the Kemper move, Plan B after losing Grubauer was actually signing Frederik Andersen. So they held Frederik Andersen to a high esteem. They rather sign him and save Timmins in the first than have to make a trade for Kemper. Unfortunately, Freddie signed with the Canes, and so they had to go to Plan C, which was making the deal for Kemper. And another guy they looked into was Linus Ullmark from Buffalo, but Boston locked him up to a 4-year deal worth $5 million. So basically, they lost Grubauer. Then their Plan B's 2 guys kind of went. They signed, and so at that point, they had no choice. Nathan McKinnon was pounding his fist on the table, saying, "You better get us a goalie, or else we're going to get mucked in the playoffs again." And they pulled the trigger on Kemper on a 1-year rental. So that's where they're at. Which I like him too. I think he's to your point. He's certainly a guy who will be in the discussion for Team Canada, and they'll go from there. But for the time being,
that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, sure enough, fair enough. And again, like, got to get into it just because we're on the topic of goaltenders. I mean, such a crazy carousel, like no other years before us. I mean, I still think it's crazy how a guy like, Mrazek goes for 3.8, Nedeljkovic goes for 3, but a guy like Jonathan Bernier, who seemingly hasn't done anything in Detroit the last, few years, he went for 4.1 million, I think. And that's just ridiculous for a guy who frankly hasn't really proven anything. Jonathan Bernier, 4.1 million over 2 years to the Devils. What an awful signing. Mike Smith, we got into with the Oilers. Martin Jones has a career still.
That's bad.
He was bought out by San Jose. Buyout basically means you're too bad to be on our team. We're paying you to leave, to get off of our payroll. And he's signing in Philadelphia. So what a fucking casket of death that continues to be in Philly goaltender world. They're going to have Carter Hart trying to rebound from a seemingly awful year, and his backup is Martin Jones. How's that for drama in Philadelphia?
Philly's is pure insanity. Like, they completely revamped their whole team. Not only did they get the backup goalie of Martin Jones, they got Rasmus Ristolainen, and they paid a first rounder to get him, which is just, and first rounder and Carter Haig or whatever his first name is, which is crazy to me. They got rid of Jake Voracek. They got Cam Atkinson, which I actually like, and they also got rid of Nolan Patrick. And did they get Ryan Ellis in that deal?
Yeah, it was a big deal.
That was a big deal. We have to get into that one because, like, Philly is absolutely, yeah. Give it up.
I got the details here. It's the Predators trading Ryan Ellis to the Flyers for Nolan Patrick, Philip Myers, and the Predators flipped Nolan Patrick to Golden Knights for your boy, Cody Glass.
Oh, interesting. So Patrick is a Vegas Golden Knight.
Yes.
Glass is a
Predator.
Is a Predator, and Ryan Ellis is a Philadelphia Flyer. So I'm just looking at it quick right now. You have Cam Atkinson now on your second line. This is interesting, something I didn't see before. You have Ryan Ellis as your top pairing. You have Rasmus Ristolainen on your second pairing. You have Keith Yandel on your third pairing. Like, that's a pretty interesting defense. Ellis and Provorov, number one. Sanheim and Risto, and then Yandel and Braun. Like, that is a really, really interesting defense. I as much as they paid a lot and a lot of wacky shit happened, I think Philly could make some noise this year. But then again, I said that last year.
Right.
So I seriously don't. I think a lot of this, honestly, I think is coaching, and I'm not sure if they've solved that issue yet. But that's a wacky move. Out of the two of them, Nick, who do you think could make their team regret more, Cody Glass or Nolan Patrick? Two guys drafted very high with a very high billing who haven't really done much yet? Very tough answer. Nolan Patrick in Vegas. Interesting.
Well, I'm split because I want to say Nolan Patrick because he's in a situation to succeed because you're with a lot of talented forwards there in Vegas, you know, and like I feel like you have more guys to play around with, but Cody Glass hasn't gotten a fair shake. Like I think Nolan Patrick he's had time in Philly to show himself, you know. It hasn't been for a lack of trying. I know he's had some injury issues, but he's had his time in a top 6 role. He's had his time to play with guys in Philly. Cody Glass just couldn't really make the lineup in Vegas. And during that whole playoff series versus Montreal, I couldn't help but say, like, Nick Suzuki is lighting it up for Montreal against Vegas, and this guy who Vegas picked ahead of Nick Suzuki in the very same draft isn't even playing in the fucking series.
Right.
That was hard to suck. Like, as a Vegas fan, that was tough to swallow. Yeah. The best guy from that draft among Brandstrom, Suzuki, and Glass, you traded to Montreal. And he lit you up, and it was a big part in why you got booted from the playoffs. And your guy who you drafted, 5th overall or whatever, wasn't even fucking there for the show. He didn't even have a ticket.
And even worse, in that Pacioretty trade, you probably asked for Cody Glass, and Vegas said, no, you can have Nick Suzuki. Like, take that in. Montreal probably wanted Cody Glass, and they're like, no, not Cody. You can have Nick Suzuki. Crazy. Yeah. That's so likely happened. That conversation very likely happened.
No, I don't doubt it. And yeah, so again, I'm split there. I feel like Cody Glass needs a chance, you know? He needs a chance.
Right.
But maybe, I don't know. I feel like Nashville's that place forwards go to die, you know? Yeah. whereas like a Nolan Patrick is going to Vegas. They got a lot of guys there. His career can only get better in a way, it seems, you know? Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, other than that, because that was one of the ones I wanted to touch on, for the Joes of the world, what did you think of the Leafs offseason? I mean, Peter Mrazek, like we said, 3 years, $3.8 million. David Kampf, 2 years, $1.5 million. Michael Bunting, a Kyle Dubas butt buddy, 2 years at $950K. Michael Amadio, 1 year, $750K. Alex Biega, 1 year, $750K. Carl Dahlstrom, 1 year, $750K. And Curtis Gabriel, the big grinder out from San Jose, he goes for $1 million, $750K. What did you make of this Leafs offseason? This is perplexing, to say the least.
Just a lot of fucking nonsense, honestly. God. No, honestly, like, Nick Ritchie moves the needle for me. Yes. I like that, especially...
He's like an ogre.
Yeah, he is an ogre. I did. He is an ogre. He's an idiot. Like, he didn't do much in Boston. What makes you think? Anyways, they needed some left wing help, big time. So this is a player where Dubas is like, oh, he's gonna be a big body presence. Is he gonna replace Zach Hyman? Not a chance. Is this guy not gonna? This guy's more of a fucking brainless body checker than a go get the puck guy any day of the week. Don't expect him to go and fish pucks for Matthews and Marner. It's not going to happen. He might lay a big hit now and then, and he might tap into goal now and then. That's it. As of right now, Daily Faceoff has Alexander Kerfoot moving to the left side because it's so fucking dismal on the left side right now. And they have David Kampf, playing on the third line with Bunting and Mikheyev, who, breaking news, has requested a trade out of the great land of Toronto, and is going to be out of the door sooner rather than later. So this team is undeniably worse than last year. You've lost your top character guy. You've lost him, and everything else is relatively stagnant. Matthews and Marner are going to be, let's be honest, they're going to have a little bit of regression. I don't think Matthews is going to score at a 65 goal pace anymore. So regressing on the top, and then you're going to have Jason Spezza, Wayne Simmons, and company getting older. This team has gone backwards to me. The defense is largely the same. Not a whole lot of movement there. And then you have guys like very unproven guys like Jack Campbell. Who knows? This is not the North anymore, my friends. This is going to be the entire league where things aren't as simple as they were before. Jack Campbell, this is going to be his first full season as a starter. And then Mrazek, I like Mrazek as a backup, I'll be honest. And then that's the way it is. I think Toronto's going to be fighting for a playoff spot. Absolutely. They're not going to be top 3 in the Atlantic. I think that belongs to Boston, Tampa, and Florida. And they're going to be fighting the Rangers and company for the wild card spots in the Metro and so on. So I think the Metro will be locked up by teams like Washington, New York Islanders, and potentially the Rangers, the Flyers, these kinds of teams. And then the wild card is up for grabs. Toronto, fucking New York, Montreal. It's going to be tough for them. Fucking Carolina. Carolina makes all these moves. You don't think they're going to be right in the thick of things? Carolina could come top 3 in the Metro very easily. And then you're fighting maybe Pittsburgh. You know, like this team could not make it. Say all you want about Montreal. This team will be in a battle. They're not going to be fucking walking into the playoffs.
I can't even remember how the playoff works in the old playoff format. So again, the wild card. So how many teams make it out of each division?
So top 3 teams in each division.
And then the 2 wild card spots. Yeah, see, that total, my mind's blown. I forgot about that just because this bullshit we've had to deal with the last year. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, then yeah, certainly. They'll be fighting for sure. And the impetus, of course, is not to just come forth, not to get one of those wild cards, because then you got to probably play Tampa, you know? So you don't want that to happen. So, yeah. No, it'll be interesting in Leafland. And yeah, it's definitely, like I said at the end of last year, I didn't even want to watch the regular season just because for me it would just be meaningless, you know? Just because I know they'd make it and then come the playoffs I'd tune in. But now all of a sudden, the way Florida has improved, you know, it's now like, well, wait a second. Now you got to take a step back and the regular season actually means something. So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. Yeah, no, they had a good offseason. They've slowly been getting better. And then, yeah, I mean, that's it. All I've got for the offseason. I mean, is there anything else you want to touch on, or can we get into our little extracurriculars here?
There is. I don't know if you consider this extracurriculars or offseason, but we should touch on Jack Eichel.
Right.
Just a little bit. My personal opinion is I heard the 31 Thoughts interview with Elliot Friedman and company with that doctor that is representing Jack Eichel's personal doctor. And this injury doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. Like, after hearing that, I heard both surgery options, and I was like, you know what? Fuck, like, I don't want any part of this guy. Seriously. The one option was like, you can get the surgery, you're going to be okay, not as good as you were before for 5 years, and you're probably going to have to get another surgery. The other option was you get the surgery, it's like a 80 to 90% success rate, and then you'll be okay for 15 years. So it's like, okay, like, are you going to be 100% though? That's what I kept asking myself for the entire time. Are we going to ever see Jack Eichel 100% ever again? And I didn't get a solid answer out of that interview. So that's not cool. As for potential landing spots, I've circled obviously the Rangers, the Minnesota Wild in there, and the Anaheim Ducks as my front runners And what I want to ask you, just out of your personal opinion, what at this point in time, what is the asking price, and what would you be willing to give up as a team in the NHL? I know the asking price is astronomical, but what do you think it's going to be at the end of the day?
I mean, I'm trying to look at comparables, right? And the thing is, you don't really have a comparable right there in front of you. I'd say the closest thing is the Seth Jones deal, right? Seth Jones in a first and a sixth for a Boakfist, a first, and a second. So the firsts kind of mitigate each other. So it's basically a first, a second, and Boakfist, who's kind of like a B prospect. That's for Seth Jones. Eichel's a tier above. Yeah. At least I'd say so. So yeah, if you're getting Jack Eichel, probably like 2 first-round picks in like a B prospect, or a first, an A prospect, and like something else, maybe, Yeah. Is that what they're... Because from what I hear, that Kevin Adams, he's just asking way too much, and he just can't find a dance partner right now. But I'd want 2 firsts in a piece, or like a first and A prospect in a piece. Like if he's coming to Anaheim, I want a first, I want Zegras or Drysdale, and I want like a B, something like a B level thing. I think that's reasonable.
That's what he's asking right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's what he's asking right now, but teams are hanging up the phone.
I don't blame him.
I don't blame him either.
How many times feels like that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. So and it's crazy because I'm sure the idea, and like the rumor mill has been out there, but the idea of Eichel for Lafreniere and a second, that's been out there. That has been uttered in some circles. I think personally, I'd kind of like for that to happen, just because I like chaos and I think it'd be pretty cool. But I wouldn't make that deal for a guy whose health I question. And the other thing is, I think for a deal that gets it done, my reference point for the Rangers' perspective would be a first, an A- prospect in Braden Schneider, and perhaps a second rounder.
Schneider, the second rounder for Eichel?
And a first.
Oh, yeah.
So first, Schneider, and a second rounder. So you're saying a first round pick, a middle first round pick, and then a second, which I think that's going to be the deal that gets it done. I'm not saying for that particular player, for that particular team, but I think you're going A, B, C kind of thing, but nothing worse than that.
So aside from the speculation, so do you think this has to happen for October, or would you not be surprised if the season starts a month from now and he's still a member of the Sabres?
The cynical side of me says that this isn't going to happen for a while. I don't know. I hate that. I personally hate that, but I think that's the way it's going to be. I think the Eichel camp is pushing for this to happen as soon as possible, but the Adams camp is trying to get as much as they can, rightfully so. And I just don't see us waking up in a morning and saying, "Oh wow, Eichel's been traded." Like I don't see it happening. I'm sorry, it's too big a deal, and I think it's going to go right down to the middle of the season. And if not, things will stall and it'll be next season. But it has to be before a certain time, or else he gets more rights and Adams loses some sort of trade, because he gets his no movement clause kicks in. So it's got to be between now and, I guess, the trade deadline would be the deadline to get this done. So to me, I see like a November, December kind of thing happening, which sucks, but there you go.
Okay. And of course we'll be updating as that goes along, and you, the audience, will be there with us, because this story is only going to develop. But from here on in, it's just speculation. The to wrap up here, Kyle, you want to talk about the Olympics or do you want to talk about Pierre Maguire?
Well, you update on Pierre Maguire really quick.
I mean, there's not really much to update you guys. I mean, shortly thereafter, Tampa winning the Cup, his contract with NBC finished up. The TV rights, of course, with them are done. Now ESPN and Turner Sports at TNT have those rights. And he basically just saw it as the perfect opportunity to jump ship and to join a team in a managerial role. And that's exactly what he's done. I don't know what the title's called. It's something like senior player development, something like that, to do with the Ottawa Senators. The way he described it in a lot of interviews, his kids, his daughter and his son have now moved on to do bigger, better things in college. Him and his wife, Melanie, are finally, without the kids, they can finally move somewhere and start a new life. And they're packing their bags from Connecticut to Ottawa. He's going to be a big part in Belleville and their development there. So he's going to be doing a lot of trips to Belleville. He'll be at every Ottawa game. You'll see him in the press box, hopefully, with his arms crossed and stomping around and throwing pop cans when they lose overtime games to the to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's his new life. And frankly, I've told this to Kyle. This isn't news to him, but I'm basically in a state of depression because my soundboard for the past 7 years, ever since I started university 7 years ago, every morning I'd wake up and listen to this guy's hits at 8:30 in the morning, and that's how I'd start my day every day. And it just brought a sense of optimism to my life and a sense of news. Here's my NHL news, my quick 20-minute hit for the morning. And now I don't have that anymore, and it's very depressing to say that, and it's very depressing to get into that. And I never thought it would hurt this much. When I heard the news of him going to Ottawa, I was proud for him. I was proud. Hey, finally he gets a chance. Everyone wrote off the Peanut Man. No one took him seriously, and now he's finally got a gig. Eugene Melnyk, of all people, the fucking chaotic maniac owner in the NHL, hires this guy. Who else would? And you're not surprised. And I was happy for him. And as the weeks waned on and the weeks went on without having these radio hits, the sense of depression set in where I was like, I have no one else to listen to now. Because there's no one else in the media world. Everyone will tell you otherwise. No one else in the media world lives up to this guy. There's no Craig Budden, Ray Ferraro. Nobody is this guy. So yeah, it's been hard to get used to not having him in my life every day. And I hope to God that this team just sucks. He gets fired and he finds his way back in media very soon, because this is something I thought I wanted, and now it's just totally been not what I expected. And I just want everything to go back to the old days. And that's kind of where I sit with this career change for Pierre Maguire.
This is absolutely a changing in the guard in this show in particular. This strikes a chord for this show. Like, when have we not incorporated a Pierre Maguire line or update or song lyric in this show? It hurts bad, but I guess you're more of a Senators fan now than you were before, in a way? Nick just wants nothing but death for the Senators.
Yeah, just get away. Go back to media.
He wants Pierre in the media, and personally, I don't care so much for his media antics. I liked it better when he was, well, you know what? No, I will miss the broadcast gaffes. But I now want to see this chapter of, okay, he's part of the Senators development team. Now I want to see what he does with this Senators team in the next 3 years. If they're just dog shit, it's another thing we can point to and laugh at. That's just my angle of it. I think it's novelty. That's what you want from the guy. We're not going to get as much of it like from an upfront, obvious perspective, but there's still going to be that novelty there when he blows. Like, for example, Pierre will be talked about in the next taxi cab video. Oh, that Pierre Maguire's such a dick. And it'll be Brady Tkachuk this time talking about him. It'll be hilarious. And it'll be the next big thing. So My prediction is he'll make it into the news somehow. He can't help it. It's just in his nature, and it'll be in a way we don't expect.
Yeah. Or maybe, I don't know what the situation is going to be like. We just heard Pierre Dorion got that extension, right? So it doesn't bode well for Maguire fans who want him. Yeah, exactly. The whole rumor was he's going to be his replacement. But when Dorion got the extension, it's like, well, no, fuck that. So he could be in and out at this point. That extension said a lot. And I don't know what his role is. Are we going to see him in a press box every game? That would be kind of cool.
I would love that.
If the coach tests positive for COVID one night, is Pierre going to be delegated to the behind the bench? I would love that. So we'll see.
So rare, though.
Oh, it is very rare, but there's a chance.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Like I said, I don't like how things have gone, but hopefully it's for the short term. And to your point, hopefully it's just a little 1-year experiment, 2-year experiment that can just add to his legacy, So.
Agreed.
And then lastly, Olympics. You wanted to touch on this. I don't want to talk about this too much because this is going to unfold for the next 5-6 months.
Yeah, we're going to get way more.
Yeah. I mean, all I'll mention is it was announced the coaching staff. So you got John Cooper, the head coach. Pete DeBoer will be an assistant. Barry Trotz will be an assistant. Butch Cassidy will be in it. What a roster of coaches. Wow. That is wow. Oh. So I don't know how they handpicked that group, but what a group it is. Yeah. And that's all we know right now. We know the GM, we know the coaches, and the rest will play out these next few months. So what exactly did you want to vent about here to close out our show for the Olympics?
Well, a lot of pundits are making their projected rosters here, and I've got a lot of problems. And don't get me wrong, all of them look so fun and fantastic. That's what I'll say first. There's nothing I'm more excited about, be it the regular season, the playoffs, any sort of storyline, than I am about this coming Olympics. Because, kid you not, you heard it here first, this is going to be the most entertaining international tournament we've seen in the last decade. Oh, yeah. When's the last time? It's been billed from 2015. We're going to get Connor McDavid. We're going to get Nathan McKinnon. We're going to get Sidney Crosby all on one team. It's going to be absolute mayhem. It's going to be fantastic. So what I want to start with is by asking you, first of all, what would your first line be constructed like? It's the most important question. It's what the fans are dying to know.
Well, I thought we did our picks like a few months, like 8 months ago.
No.
I had my picks. I mean, I just can't remember.
As of now, off the top.
I think I had McDavid and McKinnon on the same line.
Okay, and we need a third.
And then I had a winger. I had the two of them, and I had like a specialist winger, but I can't remember who they played with. I mean, I think I had like a really speedy guy to complement their speed, but I can't remember. Yeah, maybe it was Barzell. Yeah, that was my first line. I didn't have Barzell as one of my 4 centers, but I had him on the wing with those two. That would be insane. But I don't know. You caught me off guard. I'll have to go back to the drawing board and relook at things. But I haven't wavered since a few months ago. I think that would be a pretty sick line. I don't think it'll happen, realistically. It sounds too much fantasy-like, that line.
Everyone has McDavid and McKinnon on the first line.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah. But
so that part is very much
doable, eh? It's not fantasy land?
Yeah. And then insert third guy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of like other candidates. And it's no secret. They have so many centermen, so much center depth, that a lot of these centermen are being pushed to the wing, right?
A lot of guys are putting Hubert out there.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good pick. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good pick. I like that pick a lot. Yeah, that's a good one.
Pure speed. McKinnon, McDavid, Barzell.
McKinnon, McDavid, Barzell, or Huberdeau's a very good pick as well. I can't argue with any of that. So no, I like that a lot.
A couple perspectives here. First of all, I think the top line should very well be Crosby, Marchand, and McKinnon, the Nova Scotia line. I was very vocal about this earlier. They train together all summer. They're gonna have that telepathy, and they're gonna be unbelievable. Second line. Yes, McDavid is on. This is still Crosby's team, by the way. I know there's been some debate about that, but this is still Crosby's team. Talk to me when McDavid wins a couple playoff rounds. Second line will be McDavid, Barzal, and Huberdeau. And you'll have
David, Barzal, Huberdeau.
Yeah.
And what's the other line? McKinnon?
Crosby, McKinnon, and Marchand.
Right, the Nova Scotia.
The Nova Scotia. Precisely.
I like that more. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, what I wanted to get into you with was I have Chris Johnson, which his Team Canada projection seems to be the leading authority on the matter for whatever reason. But he's got Mitch Marner on the top line. Color me fucking pink, my friend.
Guy hasn't won shit.
That guy hasn't won shit. You have, and further to that, you've got Marner on the right side, McKinnon on the left. Everybody knows that when McKinnon switches to the wing, he's on the right side, which is just as if you'd have Mitch Marner taking over. Like, that's fucking dumb as hell. And then this guy has, well, he's got Barzal as an extra, which I guess you can consider. But the worst thing that I've seen, and I love the player, he's got his defenseman laid out in a decent way, but he's got Bowen Byram as an extra defenseman on this team.
The guy can't even crack Colorado's lineup in the playoffs.
What is that? What is that? He actually thought, he sat down with his fucking, all his data, all his brain power, and he thought, I'm going to pick Bowen Byram, and I'm going to leave all these all-star defensemen on the table. Bowen Byram. Bowen Byram.
You caught me off guard with this.
This guy is a leading authority on this matter.
That's shocking.
Darnell Nurse did not make his squad. But Bowen Byram is the extra. The fuck is that? What is that? That's like saying Lafreniere will be the extra forward. I'd more likely to believe that than Bowen Byram. I'm sorry, I love Byram, but that's ridiculous.
Yeah, the guy just made his debut a year ago.
The guy barely made his debut and he got injured.
Yeah, that's shocking. I don't buy that.
So yeah, crazy. So the other Olympic news that I have to bring up, and we chatted a little bit about this, but you go around, you look at all the hockey superpowers, and you're all impressed, and ooh, that's going to be amazing. It's going to be hard to beat. But then you look at Russia, and you realize 2004 was a very important draft for the NHL because they took a guy in Evgeny Malkin in the draft. Evgeny Malkin will be the number one center for Russia. Can you guess who the hockey writers has as the projected number 2 center for Team Russia at the Olympics? Number 2, behind Evgeny Malkin.
Russian center. Is he in the NHL or is he a KHL?
He's an NHLer.
NHLer.
Do not look it up.
No. Just I just gotta pull up rosters here. Interesting.
You probably won't get it.
Very. How isn't? Wait, who's the first line center?
Malkin.
Isn't Barkov a center?
He's Finnish.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at just rosters. Like I'm just looking at like teams.
You will not find a Russian center at the top of it.
That's Kuznetsov?
You could make that argument, though this guy doesn't have it on his team.
East or West Division? Is he in the East or does he play in the West?
Nick, I don't even know who this guy plays for.
Really? Okay, well, tell me that.
I think he plays in the East. This guy is Vlad Nemesnikov
Oh, yeah.
as the second line center.
That's horseshit.
It's
That guy's
horseshit.
a fourth line center at best.
Correct.
That guy could barely crack an NHL lineup. He was on Tampa and they got rid of him, and I haven't followed him since.
Yep. And
It's putrid.
third, Ivan Barbashev. Fourth,
Yeah.
Mikhail Grigorenko. Even if you put Kuznetsov in there, it's horseshit.
They're done.
It's crap.
They're done.
But Nick, it's
They're gonna
funny.
Have a sick power play. They'll have the best
I know.
power play in the tournament.
I know.
And that's it.
Let me run you through the right wingers.
Goalie will win.
Goalies and right wingers: Kucherov, Svechnikov, Kaprizov, Kovalchuk. Left wingers: Ovechkin, Panarin, Tarasenko. It's so different. Like, you have stud power on the wings. Goalies, yes. Centers, dog shit. It's crazy. Russian development, you can see, favors a certain style. Completely contrasting Canadian development, which favors centerman. It's completely contrasted.
I'm almost unsure which team I want to pummel to the ground even more, the Russians or the Americans. Because, like, that Russian team sounds so, like, hot doggy and just, like, horse shitty that, I just want to muck them. But at the same time, like, if Austin Matthews plays for the Americans, I just want to muck them, too.
Yeah.
You know? Who do you want to beat more?
Well, yeah, that...
There's such dislikable adversaries.
There's such dislike. See, now the strength of the Americans is undoubtedly on defense. Like, the defense of a Jacob Slavin, Charlie McAvoy, Seth Jones, Adam Fox, Ryan McDonough, Quinn Hughes, Zach Werenski, John. Like, their defense is the best in the league. Is best in the tournament. There's almost unarguable. However, Jack Eichel's health will be a huge key contributor to this. Because after Matthews, you have Larkin, who's good, JT Miller, who's good. They have Jack Hughes here as an extra, we'll see. But and then you're running into the same problem.
So both Hughes brothers.
Yeah.
On the team.
Yeah. But you have to make sure, you have to see if Jack Hughes can live up to the billing first. But if Eichel is not healthy enough or is not himself, then all of a sudden USA's roster catapults into just a black hole. Because their center depth doesn't stack up. Because that's the thing. All these wingers on Team USA, they're all natural wingers. Canada moves centers to the wing, and USA has a lack of centers and an abundance of wingers, just like Russia. Not to the same extent, but it's very interesting to see. And the goalies are good too, of course.
Yeah.
No, that's great. You got my blood flowing. It's a very exciting topic, and like I said, we could we're only gonna elaborate more the next 6 months. I mean, it's the biggest thing to happen. It's huge. It's a huge event that we've been clamoring for so long. 8 years in the making. It's going to be a huge deal, you know, and it's only going to evolve from here on out. So we won't belabor the point now, but certainly there'll be a lot to get into as the weeks go on. Final thing I want to touch on. I mentioned there'd be some gaming news I want to get into. They released the trailer for NHL 22. This is a big deal. This is the first NHL coming out on next-gen consoles. You might remember the first one last year, 21, didn't come out on next-gen. It was only on the old gens. So it's coming out on next-gen. They're upgrading the engine that the game runs on. So they're going from something called the Ignite engine to the Frostbite engine, which is like what games like Battlefield, other EA games like Battlefield run on. So it's a whole new engine, which means the graphics are going to be dramatically different. This is like as new a shell as we've ever seen. And so you the next gen aspect, the new engine aspect, it has. I've never been excited about an NHL game so much than this one coming out. The last Chell game I played was the Chinook Cup game 7 years ago, and it was the first one on PS4. But it wasn't that dramatic. This looks dramatic. Watch the gameplay trailer. It looks impressive, and I for the first time I'm actually really excited about an NHL game. So, want to just give that a little shout out. October 22nd on PS5 and PS4, and those schlubby Xbox consoles as well.
Oh. Well, yeah. As the proud new owner of an NHL 21. I'm not sure I'm going to invest for quite a while. Usually I like to go in 5-year increments. So you'll have to let me know how this one goes, and we'll see. But I've actually heard on the Twitter sphere people being disappointed with how things have looked.
Really?
Yes. A lot of people say it looks like shit, like a cheap rebrand. So the jury's still out. I would wait for the reviews, and I'll wait for your review in particular.
Yeah.
Because you are the Schlub Squad champion.
Yeah.
I'll be picking it up, and like I said, I haven't picked up one of these on day one since 7 years ago. So yeah, I haven't had a motivation to do so in a while. I see this as just this franchise just doing the same shit every year. I've been very pessimistic and skeptical. But seeing this trailer, and any time a game changes its engine, that's a big deal. I don't care if it's a sports game, a shooter, it doesn't matter. You change your engine, that's like changing the whole landscape of the game. And I get to play it on my PS5, so like it's only the better. I think I'm optimistic here. So yeah, I just wanted to give that a shout out. Hopefully the fans out there are as excited as I am, and look out for my review in 1 month's time. Is that it, Kyle, for tonight?
Oh, one more thing. Just want to give a quick shout out to the Women's World Hockey Championships. Marie-Philippe Poulin, is she the greatest female hockey player of all time? Perhaps. She's got like 3 gold medal winning game winners. Wow. 3 gold medal game winners to her name, which is more clutch than anything I can say about any current hockey player. Yeah. So when I saw that goal go in, I got pretty emotional. I was like, wow, that's clutch. Because I remember her all the way back in 2014 doing that stuff. So really cool to see that. I know they've had a bit of a drought, and then we'll see them back in 2022. Yeah. So,
I didn't watch any of those games, but yeah, I did catch that game winner, and it was pretty impressive. What a snipe that was! Yeah. Just coming in and just ripping it in the top corner. She's always been one of the best. I mean, like, come on, like I know Haley Wickenheiser's always been kind of the idol. Yeah. The name brand, but lately Poulin has really eclipsed her.
Poulin's done more.
Yeah, more clutch stuff. Yeah, she's incredible. Great hockey player. Thanks for mentioning that. It's kind of been lost in these last couple weeks with all the off-season stuff, but that was an impressive win. They beat the Americans twice, so good on them. And we all know how much of a big rivalry that is when the U.S. and Canadian women lock horns. So, yeah, good on them. And yeah, with that said, we'll leave it on that note. I mean, there was lots to catch up on this episode. It was basically 3 months of news we crunched into just over 2 hours here. We hope you all enjoyed it. We sure did, to get back in the saddle here and shake off the rust and get back into things. And yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed it too. So from here on out, we'll be starting a new season. I mean, we got a lot coming up. Stay tuned. We got a season preview show. As we do annually, we'll be previewing every division, ranking all the teams like so, where we see them going into the season here on out. And then, of course, our annual fantasy hockey special, which we're really looking forward to. With Joshua Schechter will be making his return to the show, his much-anticipated return to give all our rankings, sleepers, busts, as we always do for this upcoming fantasy hockey season. So lots to get into here, lots coming up in the next month. I know the season's still a month away, but you'll get plenty of coverage if you stick to us here. So we hope you guys enjoyed. Lots more to come, and it was a pleasure to serve you yet again. So unless Kyle's got some final words here, no, he's good. We will part ways with you here. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, good night.